Hi guys, for the obligatory disclaimer today, this video is for entertainment purposes only. I am not a professional speculative advisor of any sort. So recently, there has been a lot of talk about the Great Reset and what lies ahead for the US economy. In the past few months, I spent some time looking at historical events which affected the currency of the United States. Alongside these events, I began to notice a particular astrological trend which seemed to underlie the greatest shifts in the status of the monetary unit, which is widely used in the US. This trend was also closely tied with the value of precious metals at the time. In this video, I will discuss why I believe that there is a possibility that there may soon be another shift in the status of the monetary unit of the US, and that this shift may actually prove to be more influential than in past events. I believe that some of the upcoming astrological events could indicate that cryptocurrency and silver may play a part in these shifts in the status of the monetary unit. Astrologers typically attempt to predict events by relating the current movement of planetary bodies to the original planetary positions seen in the birth chart. The movement of planetary bodies at any given time are called transits. Another prediction method is progressions. With progressions, one takes the date and time of birth of some entity and adjusts the chart to reflect the planetary positions which were seen in the days or months following the creation of that entity. For example, the United States is a country which was started on July 4th of 1776. If we wanted to see the progress chart for the United States 1 year after its creation, we would look at where the transiting planets were on July 5th of 1776. If we wanted to see the progress chart for 20 years after the creation of the United States, we could look at where the transiting planets were on July 24th of 1776. In the progress chart, the day for a year formula is what is typically used. For the events discussed in this video, we will primarily use the slower moving progress chart of the United States, and we will also make reference to some transiting planets at the end of the discussion. While transits indicate more readily apparent themes or events which can come and go rather quickly, depending on the speed of the planet involved, progressions indicate the influences which can underlie grander scheme transitions in the life of the entity. Progressions can represent the changes which can take decades or even centuries to come about. While looking at the historical events of the United States, I began to notice that there was an astrological trend which seemed to stand out in the progress chart during the years when there were significant changes in the status of the currency and in the value of precious metals, or in the relation of precious metals to the currency of the United States. These events seemed to transpire whenever the progressed Venus, progressed Saturn, and the progressed Moon were involved with one another in adverse aspects and stressful configurations. The first time that the progressed Venus, progressed Saturn, and the progressed Moon were involved with one another in a stressful configuration was in August of 1786. The progressed Saturn was at 15 degrees of Libra, the progressed Venus was at 15 degrees of Cancer, and the progressed Moon was also at 15 degrees of Cancer. The progressed Moon and progressed Venus joined together in an exact conjunction, down to the minute, on August 7th of 1786. On August 8th of 1786, the U.S. Congress unanimously chose the dollar as the official monetary unit for the United States of America. So in the progress chart of the United States for August 8th of 1786, the progressed Moon is exactly conjunct progressed Venus, and both of these planets are exactly forming a 90-degree square to the progressed Saturn. Of the configurations I found, this was the most exact configuration seen. To me, this makes sense because the declaration of the dollar as the monetary unit would be the base event for all of the currency-related events to follow, at least for now. So now for the second event. It would take another 86 years for the progressed Venus to close in on another stressful aspect with progressed Saturn, which also happened to involve the progressed Moon. On February 25th of 1862, the progressed Venus had moved to 19 degrees of Libra and was conjunct progressed Saturn at 21 degrees of Libra. Both planets were opposite the progressed Moon at 18 degrees of Aries. The Civil War began on April 12th of 1861. Less than a year later, on February 25th of 1862, the Legal Tender Act was passed. Before the passage of this act, the only currency issued by the United States was presented in the form of gold and silver coins, also known as specie. Sorry, I have a lot of problems with that word. Anyways, only these coins were considered legal tender. At the time, there were also paper banknotes issued by private banks. These notes were not considered legal tender. They were only redeemable for gold and silver at the bank which had issued them in the first place. If the bank had gone insolvent and did not have the gold or silver to redeem these banknotes, the notes were considered worthless. Only 10 months after the Civil War began, the government passed the Legal Tender Act, which introduced greenbacks, a form of paper money, and made it official legal tender. Greenbacks were just paper fiat currency, and their value did not depend on gold or silver. Scarcity could not govern the value of this paper money, as it could be very easily and cheaply manufactured. Therefore, the tangible value of this monopoly money was baseless and entirely reliant on the word of the government. The introduction of paper currency was not a popular concept at the time, for obvious reasons. It disrupted the natural economic equilibrium, which could be maintained by retaining a tangible form of currency which had some relative degree of scarcity. While the value of gold and silver is still recognized worldwide for holding some value whether or not it is in the form of a coin, the value of paper currency can be easily manipulated and offers the government control over determining the value of the currency reserves of the wider population. Like I mentioned, the concept of monopoly money was not very popular at the time, but just a few months after the Civil War had been initiated, the federal government suddenly realized that they were running very low on gold and silver coins. Sound familiar? The only real rationale ever presented for the introduction of paper currency was that the government just couldn't rack up the coin to pay for the Civil War. Panic-stricken by their debts after only just 10 months of war, they brought paper fiat currency into circulation. It is interesting that this rapid economic action was taken so quickly after the onset of war, at a time when the attentions of the American people were focused on more pressing concerns, such as life and death. The fact that this split decision ultimately proved to permanently change the currency used in America has made some people wonder if perhaps the Civil War was initiated simply for the purposes of rationalizing the introduction of monopoly money in the first place. But this isn't all that happened during 1861 and 1862. Many influential economic decisions were made during these years when war raged across the country. The new Secretary of the Treasury, none other than Salmon P. Chase, also trailblazed the creation of the national banking system at this time. Fun fact, Chase National Bank was named in this man's honor. It would take Venus another 82 years until it would reach its next adverse aspect to Saturn. And so we are on to the third and final adverse configuration between these three planets that has occurred historically to date. In 1944, 730 delegates from 44 allied nations gathered at the Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to rebuild the international economic system amidst World War II. Isn't it funny how war seems to be when politicians really come together to make the most controversial economic decisions? At the time, the U.S. happened to own 2/3 of the world's gold. So during this conference, the U.S. had quite a bit of sway in the negotiations and pushed to greatly influence the decisions that were made. During the Bretton Woods Conference, these representatives would replace the gold standard with a regulated system of fixed exchange rates. These fixed exchange rates would be tied to the U.S. dollar, making the U.S. dollar the new world reserve currency. It was also decided during this conference that international agencies would be created in order to monitor economic activity across the globe. This agreement established the International Monetary Fund and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which is now part of the World Bank Group. Although the Bretton Woods Agreement was signed on July 22nd of 1944, it wasn't until 1945 that the organizations became operational and the US dollar officially became the world's reserve currency. Strangely enough, it's pretty difficult to find the exact historical moment when the US dollar became the world's reserve currency, so for this date we will just use the date of the Bretton Woods Agreement and keep in mind that it wasn't until 1945 that the decisions that were made were implemented fully. So on July 22nd of 1944, the Progressed Saturn was at 1 degree of Scorpio, and it was square the Progressed Venus at 1 degree of Aquarius. The Progressed Venus was square the Progressed Moon at 22 degrees of Aries, and the Progressed Saturn was also opposite this Progressed Moon at 22 degrees of Aries. This formed a T-square between the three planets, with the Progressed Venus forming the focal point of the configuration. As the Progressed Moon moves about a degree per month, you can see that in 1945, it would have formed a close square to the Progressed Venus and a close opposition to the Progressed Saturn. It has taken Progressed Venus another 76 years to reach its next adverse configuration with the Progressed Saturn and the Progressed Moon. But here we are, and this is what the Progressed chart looks like in September of 2020. As you can see, the Progressed Venus is at 1 degree of Taurus, opposite the Progressed Saturn, at 2 degrees of Scorpio. The Progressed Moon is currently at 28 degrees of Capricorn. This configuration will become closer and closer in the coming months, and its effects may be most evident from the end of November 2020 into January of 2021. The Progressed Moon will reach 1 degree of Aquarius by November 30th of 2020, and will remain at this degree until December 26th of 2020, when it moves to 2 degrees of Aquarius. But wait, there's more! As you may have noticed, along with this particular configuration, we will also have the Progressed Moon coming to conjunct the Progressed Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn. The Progressed Moon does traverse the whole chart every 27.5 years, but it is interesting that this conjunction will also play a key role in the configuration seen in the Progressed chart between Saturn, Venus, and the Moon. The fact that Pluto will play a role in this configuration could mean that the events which come to pass could be even more influential than previous historical events which occurred during these past configurations that we've discussed. Pluto is the planet of power, control, transformation, and rebirth. It is symbolized by the phoenix, which burns to the ground and rises from the ashes. The Progressed Moon will exactly conjunct the Progressed Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn on October 20th of 2020. From this date forth, we may see major events come to pass which relate to the currency and banking system of the United States. In ancient astrology, the sun was designated as being symbolic of gold, while the moon symbolized silver. Pluto is also known to rule activities like mining, as well as things that lie beneath the surface, like oil. In the Nixon Shock of August 15, 1971, Nixon directed Treasury Secretary Connally to suspend, with certain exceptions, the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, ordering the gold window to be closed such that foreign governments could no longer exchange their dollars for gold. This event led to the collapse of the Bretton system and was also the final death blow to the gold standard. After this, the dollar was no longer tied to gold. It is interesting to note that in the Progressed chart of the United States for August 15th of 1971, the Progressed Sun, which represents gold in ancient astrology, was conjunct the Progressed Pluto, which represents death, transformation, and rebirth. This conjunction became closer to exact in March of 1973, when the fixed exchange rate system became a floating exchange rate system. After the Nixon shock, gold skyrocketed in value. It is interesting that the identity and value of gold, as represented by the Sun, transformed, as represented by Pluto, in numerous ways during the conjunction of Sun and Pluto in the Progressed chart. The Progressed configuration that we are approaching between Venus, Saturn, and the Moon also features a conjunction of the Progressed Moon and Progressed Pluto. My suspicion is that a transformational shift in the status of the currency of the United States could also involve a change in the value and status of silver, as the Moon rules silver in ancient astrology. We may have a new currency which is introduced and is tied with silver somehow. This could lead to an increase in the value of silver, similar to the transformation in the value of gold after the Nixon shock. Some supportive evidence for my suspicions can be seen in a related astrological event which recently occurred. There was a new moon at 28 degrees of Cancer on July 20th of 2020. This new moon closely opposed the Progressed Moon-Pluto conjunction, which was just mentioned as an aspect that could possibly indicate a change in the value of silver. On July 20th of 2020, when we had that new moon, the price of silver began a steep upwards trek. The focal point of the Progressed Saturn-Venus-Moon configuration will be the Progressed Moon-Pluto conjunction. The Progressed Moon will conjunct Progressed Pluto, the planet of transformation, right before it enters the sign ruling cryptocurrency. The Progressed Pluto is currently at the very last degree of Capricorn, so once the Progressed Moon passes over Progressed Pluto, it will enter Aquarius and exactly aspect the Progressed Saturn and Progressed Venus. Aquarius is the sign ruling radical thinking, progressive ideas, technology, electricity, the internet, and cryptocurrency. In December of 2020, transiting Jupiter, the planet of expansion, and transiting Saturn, the planet of structure, will simultaneously transit over the Progressed Moon-Pluto conjunction, and will also enter the sign of Aquarius shortly after. These two transiting influences of the outer planets may further expand the effects of the other configurations involved. On December 21st of 2020, we will have what is known as a great conjunction between transiting Jupiter and transiting Saturn at 0 degrees of Aquarius. This conjunction occurs every 20 years or so, and has been cited by Louis McWhorter as being indicative of changes in the business cycle, which can be synonymous with expansion or contraction. This will be the closest great conjunction to have occurred between Jupiter and Saturn since 1623. Apparently, the first plan for global governance was written by Emeric Cruz in 1623. It would be interesting to look into the specific subjects which were covered in that particular text. It is interesting to note that this upcoming conjunction between the transiting Jupiter and transiting Saturn will occur at 0 degrees of Aquarius, a critical degree which marks the starting point for the sign ruling technology, cryptocurrency, and unexpected change. The great conjunction of transiting Jupiter and transiting Saturn will conjunct the progressed Moon at the beginning of Aquarius and more widely conjunct the progressed Pluto at the end of Capricorn. This means that we will have 3 astrological configurations overlaying one another at the same time. The first will be the conjunction of the progressed Moon and progressed Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn, exact on October 20th of 2020. The second will be a T-square formed between the progressed Saturn, progressed Venus, and the progressed Moon, which will be closest throughout December 2020 and the beginning of, January of 2021. The third will be the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, which will occur on December 21st of 2020. The end of December 2020 through to the beginning of January 2021 will be a period to watch closely, as transiting Jupiter and transiting Saturn will exactly trigger the progressed configuration formed between the progressed Moon, progressed Venus, and progressed Saturn at this time. In the birth chart of the United States, Saturn rules the second house of currency, cash flow, and financial transactions. Venus rules the 6th house of health, civil servants, and service occupations, as well as the 11th house of the wider public and organizations, as well as ideals. The Moon rules the 8th house of banking, taxes, secrets, and death. Pluto rules the 12th house of all that is hidden, secrecy, and deception. All of the configurations discussed will overlap one another at the end of Capricorn and at the beginning of Aquarius. The primary area of the chart where the energies of the configurations will be most focused will fall in the 2nd house of the United States. This could bring the most significant changes to the house ruling values, currency, cash flow, transactions, and the monetary unit. The progressed Saturn will fall in the natal 11th house of the United States. This could mean that the wider public, groups, organizations, idealism, and radical movements could play a role in the changes which take place. The progressed Venus will fall in the natal 5th house of the United States. This could mean that speculative markets, risk-taking, fun, entertainment, and the youth of the country could play a role in the changes that take place. This has led me to believe that we may be approaching a big shift in the status of the US dollar and in the monetary unit that is widely used as currency in the United States. It is possible that we may see the death of the dollar and the banking system as we currently know it. We may see that they are both replaced with a new system that could be closely involved with cryptocurrency that may also be backed by silver. Alternatively, there could be a power struggle with attempts to introduce some cryptocurrency and control the monetary unit that is widely used in the US. The final thing that I would like to point out is that this whole configuration will happen in the year leading up to the Pluto Return. The Pluto Return will happen on February 21st of 2022 and will mark the moment that transiting Pluto has completed its 248-year orbit around the entire chart and finally returned to its natal position in the US chart at 27 degrees of Capricorn. The Pluto Return of the United States will also be coupled with the Pluto Return for a book, which was written during the same period as the time when the United States formed as a country. The Wealth of Nations was first published in 1776 by Adam Smith, who has been regarded as the father of economics. In the book, he discusses how important it is for the currency of a nation to have some tangible value, out with its status as a currency. It is interesting that this book will also have its own Pluto Return alongside that of the United States. So thanks guys for watching. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. And thank you so much. Thank you so much.